Right, we're going to give it a couple minutes here for people to kind of stagger in, and then we will get started. All right, so I'm going to do the intros here. So we record these calls every month. It's awesome for anybody who joins us live, and you get to answer or ask any of your questions when you join. And we will kind of go through, we collect pre-submitted questions that get submitted when people register for the event ahead of time. So we'll go through those first. If anybody in the room has any questions they want to ask, feel free to pop them in the chat. And then after we go through the pre-submitted questions, we will answer those. And again, this whole thing gets recorded and will get uploaded to YouTube and all of our social channels in short order, usually maybe a week or something behind. I know last month's was posted, and the topics we cover, last month we covered the skills functionality inside of Claude and Copilot and Gemini and all the other LLMs, and that video is posted to socials and on our website. You can view those on our AI tips page, which has, at this point, I think at least over 50 videos of different tools and tips and things you can work through different AI solutions on there. So first, we're going to kind of go through some of the pre-submitted questions that people asked when they registered for the event. So the first one is, well, before I do that, I forgot to do our intro. So I'm Mark Umstead. I am the founder and president of Plus One Technology. And we also have Jessica Peden, who is our AI engineer and implementer on the call too. Jess, you want to give a little hello?
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet with you. I know technical issues. I do it all the time.
Yeah. All right. So looks like we have 6 pre-submitted questions. So I'll go through those real quick. And these are all great. We love seeing all these pre-submitted questions that we can kind of go through and get people the answers they're looking for. So the first one was, is AI going to replace my people? I think every time we have a generic Q&A, this is one of the questions that comes up. So I will say for most small to medium businesses, people that we typically interface with, we don't see it replacing a ton of people on the small to medium sized businesses. Where we do see kind of, and we've already seen this, major job losses is on the enterprise side. And I believe most of that is because AI is great at replacing tasks, individual things, or small pieces of workflow. And in enterprise companies, there are people that their entire job is a task. So if you are a task worker where you're just completing one thing in front of a computer over and over and over again every single day, Monday through Friday, for your entire life, there's a good shot that AI might be able to do that job. And when it does that job and you don't have any kind of customer facing or vendor facing relationship or coordination or collaboration with people, that often tends to eliminate jobs. So I don't think we see it a ton on the small to medium sized businesses because there's less of those people that just have that very not narrow minded work. And a lot of those, most people in small businesses have 10 to 20 things they're supposed to be doing, and they always have extra things they could do. So I don't think we're going to see kind of mass layoffs in the small to medium business world, but at the enterprise world, we're already kind of seeing it. Anything you want to add there, Jess?
I was going to say, I actually feel like it makes the small to medium businesses more productive just because they're getting rid of some of that stuff off of their employees, so their employees are more efficient.
Yeah. I think the gains for small to medium sized business is tremendous when it comes to AI. Second one is, where does my data go? So this is a little bit different depending on what you're using, how you're using it, and what kind of platform you're using. So if you're on a free or consumer plan, you do have to be a little bit concerned because the models do train on your data if you're using, especially a free plan, and even some of the consumer plans. It's right in the T's and C's of what you sign on for that you are kind of helping them develop their product. And I definitely wouldn't put any kind of PII if you're using a free plan into the system, which if you're a small business owner, can be a little concerning because if your people are using a free plan and you don't know what they're dumping in there, that's something you definitely need to not only develop a policy around, but also have some technical guardrails around it. Now, if you're on an enterprise or a business plan, it's kind of right in the T's and C's that they're not training the model on your data, and your data is pretty secured. We do recommend that if you have any kind of PII or information that would fall under compliance, that you have some guardrails around what gets uploaded, but for the most part, it is relatively protected. Anything you want to add on that, Jess?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And the next one is kind of a big one. And Jess, I'm going to let you take this one first because I think you're probably have a better idea than I do. And that is, which product should we use, or which model should we use?
So I think it just kind of depends, and it really depends on what task you're going to do. I'm currently, for the last 2 weeks, trying to test all the different models to see which one is the best one to use. I will say some people like Claude better, but then you have the different levels in there on which kind of model you want to use inside of Claude. That one is really good for, I would say, designing things, especially since they have their new design tab, and for your comprehensive documents, for it to go in real detail. But then Claude, on the other hand, does really good at doing deep research into documents. Like, it can go a lot deeper inside of there. And then it still has different models in there. So you can go super smart or super fast or light. I mean, you have a bunch of different options. And I want to put together something for that. And then Grok is really, really good for business analysis.
Yeah,
Any
that's great.
ROIs, all of that.
Yeah, I think it really, I think the one thing to take home is that there isn't some kind of, we don't recommend that you use this one model for everything in your business. Every single one of them has strengths and weaknesses on certain aspects of it. Some of them are a little more creative. Some of them are better at, data analysis or technical writing. So there's kind of a different, perfect fit depending on what your use case is and what your business is.
I think it also applies to APIs. So on the back end of that, when you're putting them into your workflows and things like that, it's what your tokens are, what you want it to be used by, and having multiple varieties of that on the back end. So if one is down, then another one can also pick it up.
Yeah, that's another good point, is having model redundancy, especially in any kind of critical workflows you have. So building in kind of routers, and there's different terminology for how you want to phrase it. But if you have any kind of critical workflows, to make sure you're not really dependent on a specific model, because especially right now in kind of the wild west days of AI, as we like to say, things go down. And then if you have something critical in your business that's tied to Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, and one of them is having a bad day, and now this workflow isn't happening anymore, and that's a critical workflow to your business. It's one thing if it's, sales proposals and you do one of those every couple of days or something like that where it's not critical. But if you have something that's routing work or doing some critical function inside of your business, you want to make sure that you have some model redundancy built in. Let's see. So we got the next one is, how do I know it isn't making things up? So this hits home because if any of you have had experience with AI, it is super confident about almost every answer it's ever going to give you. Never kind of gives you a flaky answer, hardly ever says I don't know. It's going to get you the answer. It's hard coded that way. It was programmed that way to please you, to get you an answer. So unfortunately, the byproduct of it being built that way is it's always going to get you an answer, and it's always going to be confident regardless of the data behind that answer or maybe the truthfulness behind that answer. So you always want to make sure that, if there's some kind of critical work product or legal language or something like that that's going out to a client, that it's in front of a human's eyes before it goes out the door. Anything you want to add there, Jess?
It is perfectly okay to fuss at your AI. You are doing nothing different than the rest of us do. I know we all do it. And you're like, I wonder if everybody does this. Yes, we all do. Ask me and Mark, we will be fussing with our AIs and we'll finally get it right when it's wrong. And so you're not alone, is everybody.
Yeah, yes. There are days where you have battles that can last a little bit of a long time. So it is critical, and there are some things you can do. Maybe we'll do a small sessions on one of these months on the things that you can do to kind of avoid hallucinations and kind of what you can, different things you can add to your prompts and your projects to not eliminate, but really cut down on those things from happening. The next question is, my team is already using it on personal accounts. So you find out that, we talk to small business owners all the time, and usually the first thing they say is, well, nobody on my team's using AI. And then we kind of run a discovery tool. It sits on their workstations for a couple of days, and then we come back and we say, well, actually you have 3 to 4 people inside your organization that are using, ChatGPT or whatever on a consistent basis. And now what do we do? So, Jess, I'll let you take that one. How do you think is the best to handle people using? What do you do when you've found out that, there's people inside your company using personal accounts?
I would, number one, right now in this day, I would always have an AI SOP, and that be one of the things that we restrict it from, whether, that's in your handbook and your SOP, so that way it covers you on the front end. But then again, I mean, we are living in a time where people have it easily accessible. So if you're not going to offer it as a company, they're going to try to find ways because they only have so many hours in a day and they can't get everything done. So they're going to try to do it. And so I would think just getting a basic plan, even if it's, just your basic one and you build it out just a little bit, like put your guardrails and things in there. That way everybody on the team is able to use it and you have the control back on it instead of them just being able to do it. And I guess another one is add monitoring to your laptops.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is actually some functionality from Microsoft and some other platforms now that if you want to restrict use, if you want to say, hey, we bought a company ChatGPT account or we're using Copilot and we don't want anybody using these other applications, there are ways now to restrict, hey, we're not going to allow the use of ChatGPT in here because we're a Copilot company or we're using Claude. So we want to shut down the other ones. There are technical guardrails now that you can put into place to block them, where I would, warn companies is what you don't want to do is say, hey, I want to block all AI usage, because then what you're going to do is now everybody in the office has got one of these in their pocket, so now they're going to go, not only are they using a personal account, but now they're going to do it on a device that's a personal device. So now you've just made the problem compound even further. So I would say trying to blanketly stop it all use is going to create more problems than saying, hey, we have a company account. this is the product we're using, and we're not going to allow you to use these other products for, security concerns is a pretty good approach. And I would kind of say, a lot of companies are trying to solve this by just having an AI policy and not any technical controls. They'll say, "Hey, we adopted this AI policy." I see this all over social media now. Is every company needs an AI policy, which I agree with. You do need an AI policy, but a policy without controls or enforcement is really just a piece of paper. So it's not gonna. You can't take your client data out of a personal AI once it's already uploaded. So, you trying to reprimand the employee isn't going to do you any good because the damage is already done. So I believe that, you kind of need a marrying of the technical controls and the policy to really have something that's enforceable and really is usable at all by a company.
I agree. You have to have something to be able to back it up on.
Yeah. Just saying, hey, nobody use AI here, isn't going to be, and have them sign a paper last Tuesday that, is going to be the last time they see it for the next 15 years is not going to do anybody anything good. Last pre-submitted question here. And just a reminder, anybody live on the call, if you want to ask a question, just put it in the chat and we'll address it as soon as we can. The last pre-submitted question here was, what does it cost and is it worth it? So I'll address the cost part first because it's pretty easy. Most of the platforms kind of start for a business plan around $20 to $30 per user for a certain amount of usage. And then you can kind of go up from there to, usually it's maybe $80 to $100. And then if you want to get, kind of the max plans, most of them are around 200 and some bucks per user. If you're going to have some real heavy users. And if you got people like Jess, she might need 2 max plans just to get through the week. But, so the cost and kind of going into the second part of that question is it worth it? The benefits you get from people who are actually building solutions out of AI is tremendous. Now, I'll say this with a caveat. I would not just go buy licenses for everybody in my company and hand them to them and say, hey, get better at your job, because that's not going to work. Most of your people, you hired them to do a certain job, and becoming an AI engineer and a software developer probably wasn't in that job description. So I wouldn't just hand a $30 license to your team member and say, hey, make us more efficient, because those people they don't have the right skill set to do that. There are some tech forward people inside of companies that we do meet with that they get it, they understand it, they know the risks, they know what comes along with software development, which is, some of what you're doing when you're developing with AI is really software development. So you really need to make sure that people have an understanding of that before you just hand them licenses and hope that they're going to get better at what they do. Now, licenses for helping them rewrite emails or basic chat functionality, maybe adding your employee handbook in there, letting them look up company files and information. That's all awesome. That can be done with these kind of low-level licenses or no license at all. That stuff is powerful. But in our experience, I think, Jess, we see that the real gains come from solving real problems, and that often comes from a little bit more than just prompting.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. I think it can be extremely helpful for a team and definitely more valuable than most things that you can put inside to give your employees to help them through the day, just because you can make it on the back end and customize it where when they go do, any kind of document, it's already got your branding on it. So that saves them time. Presentations that could take hours now only takes 10 minutes. And so they're able to actually use more of their brain doing things that they want to do and not such of the small things that are tedious that could take away the time from them. So I feel like it's definitely worth it just to be customized and to be able to make them more efficient in a better way than just handing it to them.
Yeah. Yep. Completely agree. So those are our pre-submitted questions. Again, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat as we go through this. The next thing that we're going to kind of cover during this call is projects. So that was kind of our, every month we will go through all the Q&A. So any questions that you have, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And then we always have a little bit of time where we can go through and do some, we'll cover some specific topic that I believe is relevant to everyone. And in this case, it's projects, which we'll kind of go through what projects mean and what that is, because I think it's something that everybody needs to use, and it's something that was kind of skipped over in the beginning of AI, and it honestly, it wasn't available in the very beginning. When AI first came out, there wasn't a thing called projects. I believe OpenAI was the first one to come out with what they called custom GPTs, which eventually became projects. And I believe they are actually now getting rid of custom GPTs and just rolling them into what projects are. So we believe creating projects is extremely important. And why that is important is because two major things I will say is, one, usage. So now that there's a lot more, companies are much more concerned about our AI usage now because there's a cost to it. So if you have a $20 plan and you max out on your usage by day 2 and you're going to your boss, hey, I need another plan, or I need this, projects are a great way to cut down on usage. And I'll tell you why in a couple of minutes. And the second reason that they're extremely important is it creates kind of a separate bucket of context. So they're things that then you can become much more organized and you can share them across people. So if you're working on a big project, or if you're, you create a project for each individual customer, it creates these little silos of context that you can upload files and have everything organized in that particular chat, instead of having a 400 page chat. And one of the reasons that we talk about it for usage, that I forgot to kind of cover there, was when you have a chat in any of these LLMs, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot or any of them, when you're just chatting, every time you kind of prompt it and hit enter, we don't realize it because it's so quick, is it reads the entire chat to come up with the answer. So if you've been operating on the same chat for the past month, every time you're hitting enter, it's reading the whole thing to try to figure out what the answer should be. So if you asked it last week, like, hey, what's a restaurant near me? So it's reading the entire transcript of your chat to come up with your next answer. So that's another reason that projects are great, because now whenever it has to read all that, it obviously churns up some of your usage to read that entire conversation again. So this is kind of like starting over in one little bucket of conversation. So if you think about it, you're in a room with 100 people and you go to talk to each one of those people individually, it's a separate conversation. The transcript of all those conversations in one place wouldn't be really beneficial and a little confusing for somebody to try to disseminate what's going on. So that's another reason that projects are really powerful. Jess, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I agree though. I have a project for every client, everything I ever do. And I started when ChatGPT first came out with them, and I was just looking at it a while ago. I have probably hundreds, like they just scroll forever.
Yes. And pretty much now, almost, unless I'm asking something really basic, I almost always just spin up another project, because I know I'm going to have, I'm going to spend a little bit of time, I'm going to have files, and it's a great way that if in a month from now I need to go back and see, like, where are we on this, and kind of where are we, I can find that conversation and where we left off.
That's exactly what I do for it. And if you have questions for people, you can always ask it.
Yeah. Yep. They're great. So what we're kind of telling you is you need to start using projects. Almost every major platform now, I believe Claude calls them projects. OpenAI calls them projects now. I think Gemini still calls them gems, right? Is that right?
I think, and I was about to look, and I think Grok calls them projects as well.
Yeah, so they're all kind of getting around the project terminology. But when you start a project, you need you kind of need two things, and you may only have one of them. The first is instructions, like what is this project going to be about, which is just, it might be a loose documentation, like, hey, we're making a presentation for our AI office hours for September, and that may be all your instructions. Or they could be extremely detailed of, hey, this is going to be a proposal project to help us write proposals, and all this information that has to do with the proposals. And that leads us to the second thing, which would be files. So if there's any documents or any information that you have that would be relevant to this particular project, when you start the project, you can upload all those files in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I add my files to the project, I'll actually ask the first chat in there. I'll say, look at the project files and create me project instructions under 8,000 characters, and then it'll go read those files and create it, and then I'll go back in there and add it.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
That's, you nailed it there. Using AI to help you use AI is one of the kind of really good unlocks, because if you're doing a project, you might not really know kind of what you need to tell it to do, and AI knows what it needs to know
Right.
in order to do it the way you want it to do it. So if you tell it in your regular chat, hey, I'm about to spin up a project, here's all the things. And the other thing you can do in the chat then is say, hey, here's what my project's about. Ask me any other questions you need answered in order to create the project instructions, and it'll go through and ask you, 1 to 5 questions about, what it may need to know, and then it'll give you the whole instructions that you need to pop in there.
Yep.
So the main function of the projects is to kind of have a siloed version of context. So you'll see when we kind of do a little bit of a demo what the difference can be between the different projects. So we went over this yeah, that's right. Copilot calls them notebooks. So every major tool has these now. You can just, add them. There's no like additional cost or anything like that. If anything, they add value to your thing. It looks like on the free accounts you get up to 5 projects. So you would have to kind of rotate them around, or maybe archive them if you're on a free plan. But any of the major plans, I don't know. I don't think there's a limit on how many projects you can have. I know when you start to get a bunch, you definitely want to use. I know I do this in Claude. There's the ability to pin them, which kind of makes them so they stay somewhere on the sidebar, so you can always see them. But other than that, they're pretty easy to search and get around through the different projects. So what would you use for a project? So like, what are a couple examples of why you would use a project? So the first one Jess hit on earlier, which is just create a project per client. Like if you're in any kind of environment where you're doing consistent work for particular clients, this is great for people in design space. So if you're, making signs, or you're making print work, or, you're an architect or anything like that has, you have a bunch of files and information that you need per client, you can put that all in a project, and this will be that client's project. So we know if you're doing like print design, we know, hey, these are the fonts this client uses, this is their logo, so that you don't have to go and find all these things every time you are going back to a particular project. Same thing with like a role project, which would be, hey, we're going to have a project for creating proposals. We're going to have a project for our HR, or, headhunting people, or a project for our bookkeeping or our marketing, so that we're organizing all of those files and information into one little bucket. So at any time we're working in there, it knows, all the history of everything that we've done for those particular roles. And the last one would be, a company project. So that could be something around, what is our company handbook. You dump your company handbook into a project, and you say, hey, anytime we want to make changes or somebody has a question about it, they can just go into that project and ask the questions, or update the handbook from there. Same thing with maybe all the services you offer. If you're in a business that offers a variety of different services, you could have a services project. The other use that's not on here would be kind of if you're in the architectural construction space, that does large projects, you might actually have a project for every project that you do. So if you're building a hospital somewhere, you might have, hey, this is the new hospital project for this, new hospital that's getting built in Maryland, and we're going to put all the files in there. And that way, if somebody has a question about the project, a proposal for the project, a measurement for the project, they can just go in there and ask questions, and it's only going to look at that information and not kind of pull from everything that you've chatted about. Anything I missed there, Jess?
No, I was going to say I usually do meeting transcripts until they got the plugins where you can do it that way too, just so that you can go back and ask any questions about a meeting that you had.
Yeah, putting your meeting transcripts in there. That's great to especially like add those to your client project, right? If you have a client project in there, you dump all your meeting transcriptions in there. That way, if somebody has a question that might not have been at the meeting about, the content of the meeting, they can just go in there and ask instead of having to read through the whole meeting transcript. So this is kind of like what belongs in the knowledge base of the project. So what types of things do you want to add to your project in order to get the biggest bang for your buck? So depending on what it is, you might want to add your pricing sheets or your service flyers if you're creating a project around your proposals. You might want to create your brand and writing, your brand guide, your brand book, your design information into a project that you're using for, developing, marketing material. Another project you might want for, your SOPs inside the company. If you're, a service business and you have a bunch of SOPs for your people to follow and they have a question about how do we handle this, they could just go in there into that project and check it off. Same thing with like onboarding new clients, or if you have project information you would put in there, anything related to the individual project, you could just drag those files in there and upload them.
I would also say any kind of reference links. So if you're going to have those plugins to your project and you want it to automatically know, hey, it's on this project task list or go to this website, have your reference doc in there so that it knows exactly what links you're going to use in the project. So it has one place instead of searching everywhere. You can put all of your important links in one document.
Yep. So, these are kind of the instructions. You want to make sure that you're detailed in the instructions. So we kind of talked about earlier how you can actually use AI to help you write the instructions. But the more detailed you can be in the project instructions, the more direction you're going to give it. Now, if you're just, if you're just looking for answers based on a whole bunch of documents, you probably don't have to give it a ton of instructions other than to provide some instructions around, we want you to just use the information in this project to obtain your answers. That's one of the things that you can kind of a hack with AI a little bit, and it pretty much follows it. Not exactly always, but if you tell AI, hey, I've uploaded 12 files here, any of the answers you give me, I want you to provide them and cite them from these documents and not use outside sources. That helps the AI know that, hey, I should be looking for my answers inside of these files instead of Bob's website and pulling an answer from there instead of actually pulling it from the material that you're looking at. It's really good for, it's important for anything that might be editorial or where there's opinions in the documents and not necessarily, based on facts. Hopefully, if you're asking a question that's factual, the answer in the document and the internet would be the same, but God knows what people publish on the internet now. So now I wanted to kind of show you what this looks like and the differences in it. So let me kind of ping this up here. I'm going to bring over my Claude here. So we have our Claude here. this is our, you will find your projects in Claude. I'm going to use Claude. Obviously, the navigation's a little bit different in all of them, but almost all of them, it's over here on the left side somewhere. It's going to be called projects. You'll find it, you'll click it, and it'll show you a list of all your projects. If you're on a team or an enterprise plan with Claude, you're going to see your projects, which are all yours. I have a bunch of them, and then organizational ones that are shared with at least you and one other person inside the company. And then there's ones here that have been shared with you, which means, you know, these are all ones that Jess created and that she shared with me to you know, have access to use. So you're going to hit create project, and then you're going to say, hey, what are we working on here? I'm going to just call this a proposal writer. Let's call it. I created a fictional company here called Keystone Comfort. So this is where you would put your instructions. For the purpose of just time, I'm just going to loosely put this, you know, some just generic instructions here. Keystone is a 22-person HVAC company in Pottstown, same time we're in. I will load a company overview, voice guide, and services and pricing information. Only use information in these files to answer questions. So we're just going to put that generic prompting in there. Obviously, if you were doing this on your own, you could ask Claude ahead of time, like, hey, I'm going to create this proposal. What should I put in there for instructions? And you could do that and change that. You can always go into these 3 dots here and edit your details. So then you can change your instructions if you need to over time. And so then you just get a chat screen. So for the most part, you know, you're like, well, what has really changed here? So it'll use some generic company context in here. Like if you have skills and stuff, they'll still be, you can still use company skills, which is what we went over last month. But for the most part, the context in here is going to be, you know, siloed into this conversation. And then we're going to grab our files. I have some kind of fictional files we're going to put in there.
I think, Mark, that they changed the place that you add instructions, and it's no longer when you create it now. That's just the description, and it doesn't transfer it to instructions anymore.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, but it no longer
you got to put it over here now.
them.
I see it. Yep. So this is where you will put your project instructions. You're right. So where I put in there was the description instead of the instructions. That's the wonderful world of AI we live in now. So
well, it used to copy it over, and it used to be the projects. I don't know why they changed it to details now.
So I'm just going to put it over here and put this in there as instructions. And then we're going to grab some files here. I'm going to add these kind of fake files, which I actually had AI kind of help me create, was these fake files for this fake company that has to do with their pricing, information about the company, their products they sell, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to add these, which is just 4 files. We're going to add them in there so it has access to those files. And then what we're going to do is just do some prompts. So before I go into here, I'm going to go into just a new chat and just ask it, you know, this is going to be a little, it's going to be a little generic because this is my Claude and it has all my context in it. But for our fictional HVAC company, follow-up email. So we'll see what it comes back with. God knows what it'll say here. It's thinking. Since I used Claude to create this, we'll see what it's saying. You'll see it's using some skills. We have a bunch of skills in here to kind of check all of our output. And one of them, which we reviewed last month, is actually an AI tells skill, which actually filters all of our output so it doesn't sound like AI. So here's kind of what it comes up with on a follow-up email. So stop by, putting together an estimate, wanting to check in. Can I make these numbers work? And it kind of goes over the financing and what you have to do. So let me just copy this and see what it says inside of our project, where it has access to those additional files that we put in there. So you'll see right away that it's using these tools like, hey, I'm going to go read this voice guide, which is kind of like a brand voice guide, how they talk about the company. And it's showing there's an overview of the company document. Those are two of the four things. So now it's asking me what was the quote for. So let's just say it was a full system. How long has it been? Let's just say, hey, they haven't got back to us in a week. And those are important things. Obviously, the follow-up a day after, a week after, a month after will be different verbiage for the customer. So you can see it's using the context that we just gave in there to look for the appropriate information it needs to glean from there to get us our answer.
I always forget how long it takes for it to work, and I'm like, man, I'm used to it being instant, and it's not instant anymore.
Yep. So you'll see here that this is much more detailed and has a lot more information about the company. Here's the short version. Again, it's guessing at the numbers because I didn't give it the numbers, but it's just saying what the numbers are. If you're holding off now, it's kind of giving them some information as to why they should do it now. And then it's using, this information about the company was in the document. So it's putting the contact name, the company name, the phone number, because it knows all that information. And then it said here, hey, I don't have the numbers. So if you want to give me the numbers, I'll put it. And then, hey, if you want us to kind of add some FUD language, some fear language to the quote, we can do that. So that's kind of cool. And then the next thing that we can do is, we can prompt it with, I have a 16-year-old 3-ton AC and an 80% furnace. Want to just replace the AC. What do I quote? So this would be your sales guy saying, hey, this is the scenario I have. I don't know what to do. And then based on the documents that we have uploaded, it's going to look at, one of the documents we had there was service and pricing. So it has, labor rates, pricing rates of some of the product SKUs and stuff like that inside of those documents. So it's going to go read those documents and come up with an answer here for that. Like, let's say it's a salesperson or a CSR or something that's trying to get this answer to the customer. So it's telling you right off the bat that, hey, we have the price book we have is from March 2026. It has this information in it. So the price would be this $7,400 installed. And then it's just kind of going through all the details of the thing, of the quote that they should do. So it's just helpful. So one more thing that I'll just show you to kind of give you a description as to what's going on here. And quick reminder, as we're kind of finishing this up, if you have any other questions that you want to ask about AI or anything AI related, just dump them into the chat right now and we'll get to those as soon as I'm done finishing up here. But the last thing that you could kind of prompt there is, tech wants to give 18% off to save the sale. What do I tell him? So basically, hey, we got a technician in the road. Customers give him a really hard time about the price, and he's trying to give them a discount. Is this something, he calls into the office, CSR answers the phone, and CSR asks the project here this question, and it basically says no. And the why is we have two rules, and it says the field discretion cap is 10%. So only, the rule is that the guys have leeway in the field to give the customer a 10% deal. And if he's already floated the 18%, then now we got to go talk to the boss, because now he's kind of, violated some rules, and we got to figure it out. And it's giving you the reasons why he shouldn't have done, shouldn't do it, and why you can't do it, and what to do if you've already done it. So it knows practically that there's a good chance that tech already told that person that they could have that discount. And now how are we going to, what are we going to do from here? So this is just a great example of how you can use projects and files to create kind of an ecosystem of information, so that when you're, field techs or people answering your phone or salespeople or your ops people can have access to all that information in a way that they can just chat with it on the fly. And it's all kind of siloed into one little bucket. So all this conversation isn't bleeding into the conversation about, hey, we're planning an event, or hey, we're looking to get new customers. How do we do that? And all these things are in different buckets of information, and they don't kind of bleed into each other. Jess, anything you wanted to add here on projects?
I don't, except for I really love projects. I would add, if you already have it and you can add your plugins, I would do that. I don't know if you wanted to show them where that is. That way, when you ask them the questions, it can either use your project files or your plugins. Should be on the main one where you went to the projects
Yeah,
underneath
so I think you got
instructions.
to go back to here, right?
I think it's underneath instructions now. Sorry, they made some updates and moved places. Oh, it's not there.
Is it here? No, I don't see text. Here is, you can add N8N or GitHub here for context, but I don't see the
Yeah, it should have
option
been
to.
all of them. You
Yeah,
know
you
what?
can.
I'm sorry. I think they decided that they were in between their features right this moment, where they were not going to just make it where you could only allow like certain ones inside of projects, that it just works across the board. So you didn't have to, because a lot of people were forgetting to add them and they were trying to do it, and it was causing a lot of
Yeah.
mix up. So I think they just blanket it now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. I think skills now work
Yeah.
across projects. That's why
Yes.
when I prompted it for the output, it went to our AI tell skill to make sure. The other thing that I forgot to mention that we probably should talk about is, if you have all the information for a project already in a folder on your computer, you can just add the folder without having to drag and drop the files. So if you have, more than 3 or 4 files, and you just want to have it, it needs to have access to 20 files or something like that, you can just add the folder instead of, uploading the files like we did here for the context. And it also gives you capacity used for context here. We barely scraped the surface of what you could do for it here, but you'll see it here. And if any one of the kind of newish features of all AI, especially, I know this is really new to Claude, I think within the past month or so, is scheduled tasks. So now if there's something you want Claude to do on any kind of recurring scenario, it can do it. And it will, it'll show up here when you kind of create them, and you can say, hey, every month I want you to go do this thing. I need you to pull this information off a website. I need you to pull this information out of a file or whatever. And any of those kind of recurring tasks will show up here. So we're about to kind of close it up here. Does anybody have any questions? If there's any last AI questions or anything like that, just feel free to put them in the chat. Give it a minute here. And if there's no other questions, then we're very thankful to the people that joined us live. Again, we record these all every month. So if you want to, we always email them, push it out on socials. So if you want to attend next month, I don't think we've picked a topic for next month yet, but we'll advertise the topic that we'll review after we go through all the questions. So feel free to do it. You can always reach out to Jess or I if you have any AI questions, obviously before and after these. You can shoot us an email, connect with us on socials, visit our website. There's a million ways to track us down. You can get it there, and we are happy to help. So it doesn't look like there's any additional questions. So I want to thank you guys all for attending. Jess, is there anything else you wanted to add here at the end?
No, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.